Scott here, and welcome to the Gods of Odds. Now, Brad Hoiseth's picks were so bad last week that I punished him with a bolt of lightning. Now, the re-energized Brad Hoiseth and Dave Dabbah bring you the Gods of Odds, week number 4 of your National Football League season.
Welcome to the Gods of Odds, episode number 3 for week number 4 of your National Football League season. I am Dave Dabbah, and that is Brad Hoiseth right over there hanging out in beautiful Southern California. Now look, we've got a great show for you today. We've got our top 10 games worth actually spending some money on. Plus, we're going to cover a little bit of what happened last week in your National Football League. Let me go ahead and throw it over to Brad to get his initial opinions on what the hell happened in the National Football League last week.
Well, for those that were watching last week's show, they might have wanted to know what the hell happened to me because I had a disastrous week. I mean, I was so good the week before. I let it go to my head, and I started playing with my heart, which you should never do when you're betting games. And it was a tough week. And by the way, everybody took a bath last week. Vegas made a lot of money last week, so I'm not alone in that case. But look at me this week, Dabbah. I'm unshaven. I've been disheveled ever since, and I've been pining the coals hard this week to find really 5 good games. I think I got them.
I got to tell you, I went back and, I looked at last week's show before we actually published it. And it was midnight when I was taking a look at it. And I looked at it and I was like, God, I think I need to call Brad. Because I think Mr. Gods of Odds Hoiseth had some interesting picks that he made last week that I knew he was going to regret this week. So real quick, I wanted to touch before we dive into the top 10 games of the week, which of course will, for all of those people that have been following our show, will include an Eagle game, which is huge because we love to talk about Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles. That being said, it is a very interesting week in front of us. We've got Dan Quinn just totally on the hot seat in Atlanta. We've got a game tonight on Thursday Night Football that, quite frankly, nobody cares about. Like, you can go ahead and write the article right now that says the National Football League ratings are going to be down tonight because Adam Gase is leading his New York Football Jets against one of Brad's favorite coaches, the head coach of the Denver Broncos. I said on another podcast earlier in the week, I said, wouldn't it be great if things got so bad at halftime that the teams just decided to switch coaches?
Well, if they switch coaches, instantly the Jets would become like the worst clock management team in football, and the Broncos would be just the worst team in football. I mean, but you haven't even hit on the Giants yet. I mean, what a disaster this team is. I knew this team was in trouble in week 1 when I was watching part of the game. I got like the NFL Sunday ticket, and I'm watching it. And the announcers are talking about how the new coach in New York is a Bill Parcells disciple. And I'm like, do these people in New York not realize it's 2020 right now? That stuff might have worked back in the 80s, maybe partially into the 90s. I'm telling you, this is a terrible football team. I think the Jets are horrendous. I think the Eagles are not very good. The Bengals are terrible. But the Giants, wow. I mean, They got destroyed last week by a team that didn't have their quarterback, their wide receiver, or their running back, or their tight end. I mean,
Brad, how could you forget about their defense? They have like 4 players they lost the week before, 2 of which aren't going to be back at all this year. It's just the Giants. The Giants might actually be the worst team in the National Football League. For a while, I've had the New York Jets as the worst team in the National Football League, but I'm coming around on this. This is a horrific football team. In terms of, Bill Parcells' disciples, I mean, it's like, don't just run the draw play once, run the draw play 3 consecutive plays in a row, and then occasionally throw in a reverse once a quarter. And that is exactly what Bill Parcells would recommend. I mean, it is just a disaster in New York. So, tonight's game is going to be terrible. Speaking of the New York area football teams, I just have to get this in. It has just been killing me, which is I do not understand how Adam Gase still has a job in the National Football League. I covered it a little bit at the beginning, but this is going to be the week, Brad. You are going to call me up on Friday, win or lose for the New York Jets tonight. They are going to let Adam Gase go, and the Adam Gase era in New York will officially be over. Win or lose. He could be like the first head coach in the history of the National Football League to win a game on Thursday night and get fired on Friday. I mean, that's how bad the Denver Broncos have become, primarily because of injuries, to be fair. But Adam Gase is just, he's lost the locker room. I don't understand why Joe Douglas even allowed him to coach again this year. It just makes no sense to me. Total disaster is Adam Gase.
Boy, what a long winter it's going to be in New York, right? I mean, the Jets and the Giants, it's a race to see whose coach gets fired first. I've never been a believer in Syracuse football. I'm not quite sure the Rangers and Islanders are very good this year. It's plus they had the worst COVID cases of all time at the beginning. It's a long year in New York, and man, I feel for those people out there because this thing's only going to pile on week after week. Should we get into some games or what?
Yeah, absolutely. But I have to say this real quick. It's official. Winter is not coming to New York. Winter is already here. All right, Brad, let's go ahead and dive into our top 10 National Football League games on the Gods of Odds show worth spending some money on. Mr. Hoiseth, you are up.
Yeah, my number 5 game of the week. And look, it was a bad week for me last week. But 3 straight weeks I've hit on the Vikings. I've been right all season long on the Vikings. Last week I said they would beat the line. They did. Lost the game, of course, but nonetheless, I think most people would agree they look better. Minnesota is going to Houston. They are 4.5-point dogs, and this is an interesting game because Minnesota might not be able to practice, until late in the week. Not a lot of practice time. A young football team, and one would think that that's a bad recipe. On the other side of things, you got Houston. They have not looked very good at all. And I think most people in Houston are along with Dave Dabbah, and that they would agree that getting rid of DeAndre Hopkins was a disaster. I personally think no practice for the Vikings might be addition by subtraction, quite frankly. And here's another thing on this game. The Vikings run the ball really well, and Houston is not very good against the run. The Texans are number 27 in the league in yards per carry. And get this one, the Vikings are number 1 in the NFL in yards per carry. 6 yards a carry. Not bad for a team that's 0-3. And when you look at the Vikings, the opponents they've played are 8-1 overall. I know they're 0-3. I know there's been some really down moments. Vikings plus 4.5 on the road. I'm going to take that. I'll take Minnesota. I predict I'll go to 4-0 on the season on the Vikings.
All right. So I have to say this about the Minnesota Vikings game last weekend. It was really a huge improvement over what we had seen in the first couple weeks from that particular football team, if you can call it that. Sort of heading into this game, they've sort of found the, if you will, and I know I'm jumping the gun on this, Hoiseth, and you're going to shoot me for this later, but they've sort of found their replacement for Stephon Diggs in Minnesota in Justin Jefferson. And I think, he just made a huge difference in that game. It opened up the actual running game. You know, a lot of times we say in, you know, the world of the National Football League, you got to run the ball, Brad. You got to run the ball to open up the running game. It's the exact opposite in Minnesota. You literally have to open up the passing game to open up the running game. And if you can do that, then things are going to be a lot easier for Delvin Cook, especially on the outside where he does a lot of his damage. So I think, you know, sort of heading into, especially if you're giving me points. Hoiseth, what are you giving me? You're giving me, what, like 4.5 points in this game? Yeah, sure. I'll take the Vikes for sure in this game. You know, also, let's just face it, the Houston Texans defensive line, not so good, as Brad mentioned, against the run. And I think when we look at the overall picture here, you know, Bill O'Brien's on the hot seat as well. Thanks for starting off with a coach that's on the hot seat, Brad. I think we're going to end up talking about like 5 or 6 of these coaches in the National Football League today that are on the hot seats. And in Bill O'Brien's case, he's on the hot seat because it's a self-inflicted wound of stupidity. That is exactly why Bill O'Brien's on the hot seat. We can cover the DeAndre Hopkins stuff another day, but this Houston Texans team is a real mess. So much so that a head coach that's actually won the division 4 out of 6 years could get fired before the bye week. That's how bad Bill O'Brien screwed up as the head coach of this team. This Houston Texans team isn't as bad as its record says, but take the points and take the Vikes in this one.
Yeah, on top of that, you know, people forget the Vikings are a very young football team. This is a team that's got, I think, 8 new starters on defense this year. They got a bunch of new components on offense. You know, we saw the emergence, so we finally saw a breakout game for Justin Jefferson last week. You just got to wonder when it's going to come for Irv Smith. It's not like this team doesn't have some talented players. Yeah, they got a bad offensive line. We all know that. But for some reason, they still run the ball pretty well. If you got no practice and you got a bunch of old guys coaching the team, I got to figure that they're going to just dumb down the playbook. They're going to run the football. Houston's one of the worst teams in the league stopping the run, so I think it's a good play.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I got to point out is, you know, Brad said the Vikes have like 8 new players on defense, and the sad part about that is, of those 8 players that are new on the Vikings defense this year, let's just face it, 6 of them wouldn't belong in the CFL. And only 2 of them are going to survive on this roster going forward. So while they got a lot of new players on their team, Brad, they don't necessarily have the right new players, which is a real issue for this Minnesota Viking team. All right, my 5th game worth spending some money on this week, if you're going to do a little bit of gambling, a little bit of betting, would be the Browns. You know how I love me some Baker Mayfield. The Browns heading to Dallas. Now, if you take the Cowboys, you've got to give up 5 in this, and I think you'd be absolutely crazy not to take the Cowboys in this game. Look, I will pretty much guarantee to everybody out there right now, I will guarantee that Dak Prescott throws for at least 350 yards in this game. And Ezekiel Elliott, my guarantee for Ezekiel Elliott this week is that he rushes for at least 75 yards. I am down on Zeke right now. He looks tired. He looks hurt. I don't know what the deal is. He's not actually reading defense as well. It is not going to be easy sledding for Zeke until he turns things around. On the flip side of it, you've got the Cleveland Browns. Brad, you got the Cleveland Browns and Baker Mayfield, who was taken, as you know, with the number 1 draft pick in the National Football League. One of the biggest mistakes of all time in the history of the NFL was, of course, done by the Cleveland Browns. I think of the top 10 biggest mistakes in the history of the National Football League, the Cleveland Browns secure 60% of them. So I would have to say, look, it's not that I don't think Baker Mayfield isn't a good game manager quarterback. It's not that I don't think Baker Mayfield can be the next Ryan Fitzpatrick. You know, a great sort of placeholder quarterback that's able to go from team to team and every couple years make you think he's going to be a really good player and then follow it up the next week with 3 interceptions. So Baker is who he is at this point. I don't see the Browns getting really sort of putting together a strong enough game plan. Though I will say this about Kevin Stefanski. He has sort of figured out what I just said about Baker Mayfield. So he's sort of taken the ball out of his hands. He's making Baker get really good, Brad. He's making Baker get really good at handoffs to Nick Chubbs. And so that right there would be the only thing that I'd be a little bit concerned about if you're taking the Cowboys in this game. Nonetheless, I'm going with the Cowboys, and I'm giving up the 5.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on this one. Look, Cleveland's riding high. They got a 2-game winning streak. That's the good part of it. The bad part of it is that they beat Cincinnati and the football team. Okay? So, and the defense wasn't very good in either game, and they were even worse in week 1 against Baltimore. Well, you're going against a pretty good offense there in Dallas this week. And, this is not Cincinnati, and this is not the Washington football team. This is the Dallas Cowboys who have a lot of tools. They need to bounce back. They had a painful loss last week. And I'm with you. I think the Cowboys do bounce back this week. They're fairly healthy. They're a team that comes into this game at -5, playing at home. I think it's a pretty good line, but I'm going to go with you with the Cowboys on that one.
All right. All right, Brad, what's your next pick on the Gods of Odds?
Well, here's an interesting game. It's the Los Angeles Chargers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't think we've talked about the Bucs all year long.
And look, Brad, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. There is absolutely nothing interesting about this game.
Well, the Bucs are a -7, and after their disappointing Week 1 game against New Orleans, they've kind of lulled everybody to sleep. The Chargers now, we've seen 2 weeks of Justin Herbert. But maybe the worst thing that we've seen out of the Chargers is 1 week without Melvin Ingram. And that's the best player on the defensive side of the ball for the Chargers. And we saw what happened to them last week when a veteran like Teddy Bridgewater came in and just beat them. And it appears like the Bucs are starting to get their feet under them. They're starting to figure it out. Tom Brady is getting comfortable. In addition to Melvin Ingram being gone, the cornerback Chris Harris is now out 4 to 6 weeks, and he's got a foot injury. And he was the guy that was most responsible for covering in the slot for the Chargers. What does Tom Brady like to do? He likes to throw the ball in the slot. And so even though Chris Godwin's likely out, Fournette's a little bit hurt, Scotty Miller is a little bit dinged up, didn't practice on Wednesday. This is what Tom Brady does. He gets a lot of people involved. I wouldn't be surprised if he saw a breakout game from rookie wide receiver Tyler Johnson. I wouldn't be surprised if Gronkowski caught a touchdown, O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate. I see this thing kind of steamrolling on the Chargers. I think they lost one of their top team players in Melvin Ingram, and I think that hurt them last week. It showed anyways. And I'm going to take the Bucs. I'm going to give up the 7 at home against the Chargers.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack what you just said there. Okay, so a couple things. One, if Gronk does score a touchdown, it won't be for anything longer than a 10-yard touchdown because, quite frankly, they won't allow him to run any patterns past 15 yards at this point out of fear he's going to pull a hamstring or something else. The second thing I wanted to say about this game really was more about the Los Angeles Chargers performance last week at home at the beautiful brand new SoFi Stadium. After the performance they put on the week before against the Kansas City Chiefs, they proceeded to soil the SoFi Stadium. It was by far one of the worst football performances I've seen all year. And yes, I've seen a Giants game, and yes, I've seen a Jets game. But I don't expect anything from those teams at this point. The Chargers, on the other hand, have a nice team. And for them to essentially, as bad as the stupid and lame as the lay the egg term is, Brad, that is exactly what the Chargers did last week. I have very little faith in this Charger coaching staff heading into Tampa, and that's really what it sort of comes down to. Assuming that they had sort of figured things out and played better and not allowed Teddy Bridgewater to sort of look like, a Pro Bowl quarterback against them, then I might have a different opinion. But on the flip side of the ball, look, we knew things were going to take Tom Brady a little bit of time in Tampa. He is sort of starting to figure things out. I think we need to slow our roll on Tom Brady has figured stuff out in Tampa. They beat a Denver Broncos defense that is littered with more injuries than the Minnesota Viking defense is. So I think I think we just have to sort of wait and see what happens with the Bucks. But I will absolutely agree with you on this one. The Bucks are going to win this game, and they're going to win it big. Go ahead and put your money down on Tampa Tom on this one. Okay. So, Mr. Hoiseth,
well, yeah, I mean, look, hey, hold on a second. First of all, we haven't even talked about the Charger coach, which I entirely agree with you. I've never been a believer in this guy, and I agree. They looked hurt. I mean, look, they were taking a Carolina team on that really has one option, and that option was not there. Christian McCaffrey. I mean, all you didn't have there. What were you trying? What did you have to game plan for? There's nothing there. And Teddy Bridgewater looked pretty good with a bunch of Punch and Judy guys around him, and so I just think the loss of Melvin Ingram is huge. There, he's one of the inspirational leaders on defense. He's a really good football player. And with him out for a little bit of time, I think the Chargers are in some trouble defensively. Yeah,
look, they actually allowed Teddy Bridgewater to run for a first down. And it wasn't like he ran for a yard. It was like a 15-yard scamper. Teddy Bridgewater scampered for a first down. Look, Anthony Lynn, the head coach of the Chargers, I personally have always liked Anthony Lynn, but he did a little bit of post-game foreshadowing the week before when he played down the success that Justin Herbert had. And that resonates with the football team. When your head coach gets up and basically says that, you did a nice job, but you're not our starting quarterback, and then we find out like 48 hours later that he has to be because you've punctured the lung with your own coaching staff of your actual starting quarterback in Tyrod Taylor. So I think Anthony Lynn has lost portions of that locker room already, and they're certainly not going to, turn things around in Tampa this weekend.
And by the way, Dabbah, there's talk that Tyrod Taylor could play this weekend, so keep that in the back of your mind as well. So I know how you feel about that, and I know you're a big Herbert guy, and you don't think Tyrod Taylor should ever get on the field again, but there is that thing looming as well.
Look, I'm a huge Herbert guy, but I will say this. Like, if they're not going to protect him, then, just let him sit on the bench. I've seen what he could do enough already. If that offensive line is going to try to play like they're members of the Cincinnati Bengals, then I say, let Tyrod run around, because that's the kind of quarterback that could, sort of be somewhat successful in that style offense. Okay. So Brad, for my second game of the week, and I've tinkered and I've toyed and I've fought with myself. I even talked to one of my kids about this. And I said, look, I have to pick this game, even though I'm not sure I would actually throw any of my own money down on it. But I'm going to do it anyways, and that is the Patriots at the Kansas City Chiefs. And I felt like between you and me, one of us had to present this particular game to the National Football League audience, because the Patriots, as we know, Cam Newton's doing a fairly good job. The people that have been ripping on the Patriots and have been talking about the death of the Patriots prematurely are officially shifting their talking points at this point to start to basically say that the Patriots are for real because Bill Belichick has figured out how to run the football. The number one rushing football team in the National Football League this year so far is the New England Patriots. And when you think about that, every time I see that gecko on those Geico commercials, I can't help but think, of Bill Belichick just for a little bit, because he's able to sort of camouflage himself year in and year out. He's able to sort of figure out how to work with whatever sort of situation he's in, regardless of the tools that he has, especially, sort of like early and midway through a National Football League season. When you get to the end of the season, you are who you are, and you have no more tricks up your sleeve. But you're talking about a Bill Belichick in week 4 of the National Football League going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. If this was week 12, I would say definitely go with the Chiefs. But since this is week 4 of this particular year, I just think that if you're going to get 7 points against the Kansas City Chiefs, why the hell not go with the Gecko/Geico Bill Belichick, who's outstanding at camouflaging himself in a way that no other coach has ever done in the National Football League. And I know you know what I'm talking about. I'm going with the Patriots in this one.
Well, you and I are in agreement for the 4th straight time. The Chiefs are coming off a huge win. I mean, that was for the Chiefs. Trust me, they circled that game last week with the Baltimore Ravens, and that was a big win for them. I think they proved clearly that they're a better football team than Baltimore right now. I thought Baltimore did a really poor job of coaching in that game. I thought the game plan was horrendous. They gave up the running game really early. I would have liked to have seen what Baltimore could have done had they continued with the running game throughout the entire game. I think it would have been a much closer contest, and I just thought it was really surprising to me that Harbaugh gave up on that. But I think there's an obvious letdown here after that, and if there's anything we should know over the last 15 years is that there should not be any letdown when you're going to take on Bill Parcells and the Patriots. And whether it's Tom Brady or whether it's Cam Newton or, whether it's Drew Bledsoe, whatever it is, I mean, the Patriots under Bill Parcells, they find a way to make things interesting. And I don't recall the Patriots losing many games by more than 7 points in the last 15 years. And so, I think it's only reasonable to think that there'll be a little bit of a letdown for the Chiefs. That combined with the fact that, like you said, the Patriots can run the ball pretty well. The Chiefs aren't a great rushing defense, and I think Bill Parcells, unlike John Harbaugh, I think he'll exploit that. And they're one of these teams that you just never really know who's going to get the ball from week to week. It could be Rex Burkhead. It could be Newton running the ball. It could be White running the ball. I mean, you just never really know where things are going to come from with this team. Parcells, like you said, he's the human gecko of coaches. I'm going to agree with you here. I'm going to go with the Patriots. I'm going to take the 7 points.
Yeah, I moved into the top 100,000 in FanDuel last week because I played Rex Burkhead in the game. This is just one of those, it's going to be a fascinating game to watch. And when you sort of think about, Andy Reid and all that extra time he had during the off season because of COVID this year, you're right. You're absolutely right, Brad. He circled it on his calendar. He sat around. He figured out, he watched what the Titans did. They figured out that they have the right personnel to stop Lamar Jackson, and they implemented. And then, just for the fun of it, because they're the Chiefs and hell, they can do it, he decided to draw up a play that included throwing a 2-yard touchdown pass to a goddamn tackle. I mean, it was just an amazing game. So I agree, there'll be a bit of a letdown in this one. All right, Mr. Hoiseth, give us your next pick.
Well, the next game I have is Philadelphia at the Niners. And the Niners are a 7-point favorite at home. The Niners really had one tough game this year. That was Arizona. They lost it. And then they've gotten the Jets, Giants, and Eagles 3 games in a row. You want to talk about a gift. That's unbelievable. Philadelphia, I've made it well known with you over the last month that I think Carson Wentz is a very overrated player. They had an embarrassing tie last week in which, Johnson coach teams are usually not this undisciplined. Just tons of penalties, tons of mistakes. The quarterback doesn't look very good. Here's the problem with this that I see for the 49ers. They're still saying that there's a chance Garoppolo could play, although they don't think so. Raheem Mostert is probably going to miss another week. George Kittle will be back, but who's going to have throwing the ball to him? The line. Remember a few weeks back, I said it's almost like Vegas once or twice a week is like begging you to take somebody.
Yeah.
This line came out, and the Niners were a 3-point favorite at home against the Eagles. I mean, they're dying to get people to lay money on the Niners, and so that line went from 3 to 7 in a matter of 24 hours. That's a massive jump. I said it last time, and I was right, and I'll say it again this time. Vegas knows something, and they're trying to get people to bet on one team for a reason because they think they can make a killing on it. And so I'm going to go against the odds here. I'm going to take Philadelphia getting 7 points on the road in San Francisco.
Yeah, this was a really tough game for me to sort of take a look at. I had like my inner Brad Hoiseth in my ear, as I was looking at this game and trying to decipher what I think is actually going to happen in this game. And so I figured as hard as Brad Hoiseth has been on, that's how predictable you are, Hoiseth. I figured you'd sort of head in this particular direction. It's always tough for me to take a 49ers team that is so banged up, that has so many injuries. I mean, what did we really witness last week in New York against the Giants? And what did we really witness, sort of the week before with the 49ers against the Jets? But I look at this Philadelphia Eagle team, and I think they're like 2 or 3 shades better than the New York Jets at this point. And the 49ers are getting Kittle back, and they've got a couple other guys coming back who are a little bit more healthy. They're going to be home at Levi Stadium. They're not traveling across the country. As I started to look at this, I started to think, is this going to be one of those games where I do have to call Brad up at midnight and say to him, what the hell were you thinking? You should have gone with the 49ers. So Brad and I obviously disagree on this one. So I'll be going with the 49ers in this game. Look, I'm not sure yet if Garoppolo is going to play or not. And I can tell you right now, locally in the San Francisco Bay Area, there's been a lot of talk about the powerhouse that is Nick Mullins. And I think the overwhelming sort of sentiment around here is that, Mullins isn't that bad. He's not that bad. We all know, what a good young coach, Kyle Shanahan is. And Mullins has been around the team for a couple of years now. So a lot of people in this particular area definitely feel comfortable with Nick starting another game or two. And I had one person, I was taking the puppy for a walk this week. I had one person come up to me and they said, yeah, they had they follow the show and they had seen the Gods of Odds thing. and they were talking to me about this upcoming 49ers thing. And this guy actually said to me, he said, I think they should just go with Mullins the rest of the year.
Well, Dabbah, let me tell you something about this. If people are saying that they don't think Mullins is that bad, what is that also saying? That's also saying we don't think Garoppolo is that good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what they're saying. Because Garoppolo is the starting quarterback there. And if they're saying, this Mullins guy, he ain't bad. If Garoppolo was really good, they would never say that in a million years. They would say, when are we getting our quarterback back, right? So at the end of the day, I think the Niners are one of those teams that they're still working some things out with the young guys. Brandon Ayuk, they really haven't gotten him involved yet. And things have looked better in recent weeks defensively. They're number one in the league in yards per attempt with the defense. But, again, you've played the Jets and the Giants. That's not a real barometer. You can't look at the numbers and say, the Niners are number one in the league in yards per attempt on defense. Throw everything out the window when the Jets and Giants come into play. And not that the Eagles have been that much better or anything. I mean, Carson Wentz got one of the worst QB ratings in the league. But at least he's got experience. I just think it's a big line. Vegas knows something. 7 points appears to be a lot to me for a Philadelphia team that is desperate to go in and have a good showing.
All right. Well, you know what I'm going to do, Brad? I'm going to keep track. I'm going to keep track of your picks on the Heatr app this week. And I'm going to be able to see if I outduel you or you beat me in this particular game. We talked about Heatr a little bit last week. If you have a chance, go ahead and download the big Heatr app. It's in the App Store. Basically allows you to put in all of Brad Hoiseth's picks, some of Dave Dabbah's picks, and then actually see who actually does better over the weekend, and you can actually put in the spreads that you actually got, which I think is a very sort of useful tool to have. So big fan of the Heatr app, and I thought we'd give them a quick plug. Now, I want to say one last thing about the 49ers, and that's, Jimmy Garoppolo. Look, Brad, he's okay. But let me tell you what Jimmy Garoppolo really is. He's sort of like the modern day Vince Ferragamo. And that's sort of what he's like, because he's loved by a lot of women in this particular area, as Vince was in Los Angeles as well. There is a love for the looks of Jimmy Garoppolo that sometimes outweigh his actual performance on the field. And you see it in every house in this particular area. Probably shouldn't be touching this at all, but that's really, who, that's one of the great things that Jimmy had. Look, every time I put on a game, I hear, is Jimmy playing? Is Jimmy playing? Boy. So that's sort of who Jimmy is. Anyways, so I thought I would take you into a different direction. And I want to set this up sort of quickly for you. Now, there's a game between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Cincinnati Bengals that's going on. And this game is actually going to be held in Cincinnati. Now, local Cincinnati, and this is reportedly, Brad, local Cincinnati area hospitals are readying their trauma centers for the eventual admittance of Joe Burrow, the rookie quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals, who last week got sacked 8 times and he got hit 18 times in one game. I am just saying that this might be one of the worst offensive lines. You can't blame the entire offensive line. Joe's got to figure out how to get rid of the ball quicker. He's got to figure out how to audible. He is a rookie in the National Football League, and those are the things that takes rookies sometimes some time to learn. That being said, I don't really think that those trauma centers are in danger of receiving Joe Burrow this week because the Jacksonville Jaguars' less than vaunted defense is coming to town. If you want, you get to take, you'd have to give up 3 points if you're taking the Bengals in this game, which is exactly what I'm doing.
You remember, well, first of all, at the beginning of the season, you and I talked about how Jacksonville had pretty much mailed it in. They were trying to get into the sweepstakes for the Clemson quarterback, and then also the Jags won one game. Remember that?
Yeah.
And you turn into the broadcast in week 2, and there's the announcers are saying that the Jags are playing the Titans for first place. And I'm thinking, really? Game 2 of the season? The problem is I just don't know. I never know what to make of Jacksonville. I mean, Gardner Minshew is a guy that giveth, and he's a guy that taketh away, and he's one of those guys. And, first of all, I can't believe he picked this game. It's got to be one of the worst football games on the planet. I mean, Cincinnati is as bad as it gets, short of the Jets and Giants. I think the Jags are a better football team than Cincinnati. I'm going to take the Jags on the road in Cincinnati. I'm going to do it in my nose, but I'm going to take Jacksonville, +3.
Yeah, look, I was looking at the list of all the games to pick, Brad.
Right.
And so how we do this every week, we're going to take you inside the Gods of Odds. How we do this every week is that Brad usually picks his first 5 games first. He sends them to me. I look at them, I laugh, sometimes I cry, and then I go ahead and pick my 5. And so I was taking a look at what else was left, and there were a couple games where there were 13.5-point spreads. And I was like, I'm just not going to touch that in any way. Plus, I actually think this will be the Joe Burrow's first victory as a quarterback in the National Football League. And I would put money on this game because I actually think Burrow's going to throw the ball probably around 50 times. I have very little faith in Jacksonville sort of on the road this week after what happened to him at home on Thursday Night Football. Gardner Minshew is a nice quarterback, as Brad said, but I'm just not seeing it. I think this is if Cincinnati's going to get a win this year, it's in this particular game. And if not, then we will absolutely lead next week's show talking about the firing of Zach Taylor as the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Well, let me take you back inside the Gods of Odds for a second here, because there was some falsehoods there that, yes, Brad Hoiseth does pick his games first, but Dave Dabbah's got every opportunity to pick his games. I come in on Wednesday and I pick my games, all right? Yeah, Tuesday, most of Wednesday. You're a lazy bum. That's what it's all about here. Okay? I mean, you had plenty of opportunities, so I just want to clarify that. People make it sound like, oh, Brad gets all the good picks, and then I get left with the Cowboys and the Browns. I mean, come on. That's not fair at all.
It's actually so true. I take the lazy to the whole new level.
All right, let's go to my number 2 game. One that is a good game. Well, it's a fun game. I don't know if it's a good game. And that is the Atlanta Falcons in Green Bay to take on the Packers. The Packers are a 7.5 now point favorite. Let's take a look at the Packers so far. Let's unpack the pack, let's just say. In week 1, they played the Vikings, who had a bunch of new starters on offense and a patchwork offensive line. In week 2, they played Detroit without Kenny Golladay, the number 1 offensive option. In week 3, they played New Orleans without their number 1 wide receiver, Michael Thomas. See where I'm going with this, Dabbah?
Yeah.
They've kind of caught a lot of teams at a really good time there. Now, they might go 4 weeks in a row if Julio Jones doesn't play, right? And so at some point in time, they're going to catch a team that's healthy, and it's not going to be as easy. This defense is not very good in Green Bay. the rumor has it this week Julio Jones might play. Atlanta has played a difficult schedule. They've played Seattle, they've played Dallas, they've played Chicago. Those are three pretty good teams. They outgained Seattle by 125 yards. They led Dallas big down the stretch before the unthinkable happened. And then the same thing against Chicago. They led in the fourth quarter. Dan Quinn could be one of the first guys looking for a new job. However, having said that, Atlanta hangs around. They got enough talent to play with anybody. And I think Green Bay is done getting the teams that aren't healthy. I say Julio Jones plays. I say the Falcons keep it within 7.5. I'll take the Falcons. Give me the 7.5.
Brad, my friend. Let me just say this. Everything you said is totally reasonable.
Good. Let's stop right there.
there's absolutely nothing wrong. But I mean, people occasionally in their life, are convinced that Star Wars should have won the Academy Award. Yeah,
not me.
and no, it shouldn't have. A good movie, a fun popcorn soda flick to see in the theaters for the very first time, and a nice job with special effects. But an actual Academy Award winner, I don't think so. So I sort of look at Brad's methodology for coming to this particular conclusion in this particular game as having some merit. I mean, that's really sort of what it comes down to. What I think is actually going to happen, sort of beyond what Brad has said, is Aaron Rodgers and this coaching staff, which I think is the thing I want to lead with here, which is Matt LaFleur has done a really nice job so far this season. I wrote a blog that covered some of this earlier in the week, and he's done a really nice job sort of making in-game adjustments. It was absolutely something that if you go back and you look at the tape and you take a look at what's happening with the Packers last year, it was something that he didn't do. A couple of days ago, I saw Colin Cowherd on the Herd say something, sort of similar as well about Matt LaFleur. I believe in Mike Pettin as the defensive coordinator of this Green Bay Packer team. I just believe that this is a Monday night game. We know that the Atlanta Hawks offense is the strong point of this particular football team. But after watching the Dan Quinn allow his team to get beat the way they got beat in the last 2 weeks of this National Football League, I've never seen it before, Brad, where a team, this is uncharted waters for us. And I really think it is, because we don't know how a National Football League team is going to respond to losing back-to-back weeks when they were up 16 and 25 points or whatever it was in those two games. We are most likely, and I'm going to say this right now, Brad, going to see a flat Atlanta Falcons football team come Monday night. I disagree with you. I like your reasonings, but I fundamentally disagree. And Mike Pettin, as I mentioned, will figure out how to stop the Atlanta Falcons. Like, everybody is saying, oh, Julio Jones might play. It's not going to matter. It's not going to matter if Julio Jones doesn't play. So those are my thoughts. Any rebuttal, Mr. Hoiseth?
Got here. I had to create some technical difficulties because Brad Hoiseth actually had the nerve to pick the Atlanta Falcons against the Green Bay Packers on Monday Night Football. And Dabbah's not much better, as he called the Atlanta Falcons the Atlanta Hawks. Oh, and when you have a chance, I highly recommend downloading the Heatr app. It is a great place for you to keep track of all of your sports bets against the odds.
All right. Well, apparently we had some technical difficulties. Unfortunately for Brad Hoiseth, one of the gods of odds, he was not able to hear my outstanding and highly intelligent takes on the Green Bay Packers and why I'm actually heading with the Packers in this particular game. That being said, Hoiseth, I think we're going to go ahead and move on to the next game in our top 10 National Football League games on the Gods of Odds worth spending some money on. And now I'm going to take you to the beautiful city of Miami for a game between the Seattle Seahawks and the Miami Dolphins. And the the Dolphins are not going to win this game, Brad. I don't think you're going to say anything different. Russell Wilson has been played at such a high level so far in this National Football League season. You've got to give up 6.5 points if you want to go with the Seahawks in this game. I think you'd be an absolute fool to put your money on Ryan Fitzpatrick in this game. He had his good game. Now he's due for his bad game, Brad.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I've been saying all year long that the Dolphins are one of the worst teams. I think they're one of the worst organizations in all of football. I don't remember the last time they made a decision that was good. Seattle, although I think they
drafted Tua, Brad. I'm sorry. I've got to jump in. They drafted Tua. Tua watch week 4. Sorry.
And Miami is where quarterbacks go to die. So congratulations, Tua. But look, Seattle I don't think is very good on defense. If there is a silver lining perhaps for Miami, I think it's that Seattle's not a very good defensive team. Seattle also is a team coming off a big win. And then they have to travel across the country. Probably the longest trip that you could make in the NFL, going from Seattle to Miami. And you're playing a Dolphins team, which you just really never know what you're going to get. I mean, every once in a while, Ryan Fitzpatrick looks like, like he's a top 12 or 14 quarterback. And then at other times, he looks like he's a bottom 5 quarterback. And so he's kind of a fun player to watch. There's something intriguing about watching the guy play. Every single time I watch the guy play, he has a rushing touchdown. I don't know why that is. But I'm with you. I think Seattle is a pretty good football team. 6.5 doesn't seem to be a lot to spend to get the much better football team in this one. I'll take the Seahawks on the road, begrudgingly. I don't think it's a great game. I wouldn't make this as a game I would bet on, but as you pointed out earlier, Dabbah, I picked the first 5 games, and you got stuck with the rest, right?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I got stuck. Like, I had my options, Brad, were like the Baltimore-Washington football team where you had to give up 13.5 points to take the Ravens, or the Rams-New York Giants team where you had to give up 13.5 points. So, yeah, that's right. Brad had a better group of games to choose from while I was being lazy this past week and not getting my picks in before Mr. Hoiseth. One last note on this Seahawks game that's absolutely worth mentioning because it's important. And that is, I think in last week's game, the Seahawks defenders got fined if they actually made an individual tackle. This Seahawks defense is just really not that good. I mean, I love Jamal Adams. They've got a couple other nice players. I think what we're looking at, believe it or not, is a high-scoring shootout. And I just believe, at the end of the day, Russell Wilson is far better at that sort of game than a Ryan Fitzpatrick. Even Fitzpatrick, on one of his great days where he actually looks like a Pro Bowler, he actually looks like he's heading to Canton, Ohio, not to just view the bus. So I'm saying that I think that the Seahawks are just simply going to outscore the Miami Dolphins in this one. All right, take us to your next pick, sir.
Well, I've had a little bit of I've taken you kind of through almost the entire NFC North. Because I had the Packer game, and of course I had the Vikings game. And by the way, we forgot to talk about that Detroit Lion win last week, Dabbah. I know that you've been avoiding that. You've just been all over the map trying to avoid that big win by the Lions when they finally got Kenny Golladay back. I've been telling you that all week. But that's not the direction.
You know what? Matt Patricia for Coach of the Year. Absolutely up. That's fantastic. Yeah, go for it.
But that's not where I'm going anyways. I'm going to Chicago, your second favorite team out there. A team that I may have been wrong about at the beginning of the season when I said they couldn't win any games. Indianapolis goes into Chicago, and the Bears are they're getting 2.5 from the Colts. Not a lot of respect for a team that's 3-0. And hey, look, the Bears. Wow, look, they're either sleeping with clover leaves, or Nagy is a really good coach. And the guy just starting quarterback at half the third game to hit the fact that he's 2-0. And that takes a lot of guts. And it shows a lot of conviction. And Nick Foles in Chicago, the second half, felt a lot like Nick Foles in Philadelphia in the Super Bowl. And I know that's an argument for you. I get that, Dabbah. But let's take a closer look at the Colts, because they're a 2.5-point favorite. And the Colts have played a football team. Jacksonville, they played Minnesota, they played the Jets. Those teams are 1-8. And all three of them have horrendous pass defenses. Well, you know who doesn't have a horrendous pass defense? The Chicago Bears don't have a horrendous pass defense. They're number 4 in the league in yards per attempt. Now, the Bears took a little bit of a setback this week. They lost Tariq Cohen. I'm saying they are going to rally behind Nick Foles. I know that's a tough one on you there, Dabbah, because you've been taking shots at Foles all year long. And I say take the Bears and the disrespected plus 2.5 at home against the Colts team that I am not entirely sold on.
Yeah, I mean, what I think I said this last week. Phillip Rivers' sidearm pass is experiencing some gravity as he gets older, and it's getting closer to the ground every time he drops back to pass. Look, I think I've got 2 words for you to describe this Chicago Bears football team and this season so far for the Chicago Bears football team, and that is divine intervention. And that is it. How else can you explain a Chicago Bears team that is 3-0 with a head coach that thought it was a good idea to bench a quarterback after he went 2-0 in the start of the season? It is absolutely amazing. I think what we sort of, in all seriousness, have to sort of conclude here is that Matt Nagy has some pretty big guts to go ahead and make the move that he made. When you look at this team that was 2-0, I think ultimately Matt Nagy had never intended for Mitch Trubisky to be the quarterback of this Chicago Bears team. I'm going to go all conspiracy theory on you here, Hoiseth, for a second. And I'm basically going to say that Matt Nagy knew that Mitch was going to get benched at some point in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, and he was just simply covering his butt. That is exactly what Matt Nagy was doing. He was like, I will be able to personally blame this on Mitch Trubisky if we get off to such a bad start, and it will be Mitch's fault, and I'll buy myself some more time with the true starter in the National Football League, which is Nick Foles. Look, I know that's a ridiculous thing to say. You don't have to tell me. I know it's ridiculous. Still, when you look at this, why not just start Nick Foles? Why would you not start Nick Foles at the start of the season if you really believed in him? Brad.
You know who else would like to have Nick Foles starting right now?
Oh, God. I do know.
Your Philadelphia Eagles, okay? Look, the guy can play. I mean, I saw him take the field last week, and I love the blog on the Mighty Rip talking about Jim McMahon and stuff, because I saw the guy, he's wearing number 9, and I'm like, God, it's Jim McMahon.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I thought of when I watched that game. And then I just watched the guy go on the field for 30 straight minutes. And if it weren't for a call in the end zone, he would have thrown 4 touchdowns and a half.
Yeah.
We're not talking about great talent around him. I mean, so, look, I think the Bears like this guy.
Yeah.
And I think he's a guy, he's kind of a character, Nick Foles. I mean, come here wearing the shield. I noticed in the fourth quarter he didn't wear the shield. And so I wonder if Nick Foles did that purposefully, just kind of get a laugh and see what kind of a rise you can get out of Bears fans. Because everybody remembers, McMahon wearing the visor and wearing number 9. But I think he's
Brad,
one of these
I remember
guys
the first time I saw Nick Foles do stand-up on Netflix. Look, I gotta jump in here real quick. And it's just, why not start him then at the start of the season? Why do you, as Matt Nagy, make the decision with everything you just said to go ahead and start Mitch Trubisky?
Well, Mitch Trubisky knew the odds. There was no and so nobody really had an opportunity to take live fire. And so I just think they thought, well, Trubisky knows the offense. Let's give Foles some time with the guys around him. And I'm with you. I think they were just waiting for the pin to drop on Trubisky. I mean, it just goes to show you how short the leash must have been, because when you're 2-0 and you're pulling the plug at halftime of Game 3, I've never seen that happen before. And I saw Foles take the field, and instantly he had command of the offense. Instantly they went down the field. Instantly they looked like a better offensive football team.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I agree with you in this game as well. The Bears are going to definitely beat the spread on this one. If you're throwing some money down, to me, this was honestly one of the easier games of the week to pick. All right, so Hoiseth, if I'm doing my math correct, which I normally do, I would say we've got one game left in our top 10 National Football League games worth spending some money on, and the Gods of Odds, episode number 3 for week number 4 of your National Football League season, and that would be the Death Star. The Buffalo Bills have the opportunity to check out the new Death Star that the Las Vegas Raiders have put together in beautiful Las Vegas. I will tell you right now, I was not surprised in any way what happened in New England last week with the Raiders. All of my Raider friends up here in Northern California had already started booking trips to Tampa Bay for the upcoming Super Bowl. Like, you guys are crazy. You're going to get beat badly by the Patriots next week, and I was right. I was right to an extent about what happened with the Bills versus the Rams. Goff led a huge comeback. I know how anti-Jared Goff you are, Mr. Hoiseth. That was ironically, a bad pass interference call at the end of the game. The Rams can't make too big of a deal out of it because of past indiscretions, and we'll leave it at that. But that being said, that was a game that the Rams could have easily won. I do not believe in this Buffalo Bills team. This is my fun team this year to sort of bash a little bit. I love Stephon Diggs. I love Josh Allen, their starting quarterback. I like a lot of what they've done. Their running game to this point has been disappointing in Buffalo, and that's going to come back to bite them. And their other secondary is a little bit weak, and I believe specifically in this game that, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but that Derek Carr is going to eat them up. and I believe Waller is going to eat them up. And I believe the deep threats that this Las Vegas Raider team has is going to simply eat up that Bills secondary. And that is why I am actually going with the Raiders in the Death Star in this game.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got to disagree with you on that one.
Hey, don't be sorry, Brad, for being wrong. Go ahead.
Here's the problem with Derek Carr, outside the fact that he's Derek Carr. Henry Ruggs is a long shot to play this week, the rookie wide receiver. with a hamstring. The other wide receiver that's a rookie, Brian Edwards, has already been ruled out with an ankle injury. Which really leaves you with an offense with a tight end, Hunter Renfrow, and a running game. And I think for a good defense, that's a pretty easy game plan. I don't think it's that easy to game plan the Buffalo Bills because their quarterback Josh Allen can take off and run. He's got a lot of big targets, and I just think it's a challenge for the Raiders who come in a little bit dinged up this week. Things started out great for Las Vegas. They've since slowed a little bit. Hey, I believe in the Raiders. I like John Gruden. I like the general manager, Mike Mayock. I think they're going in the right direction. I just think they're a little nicked up. I think the Bills are coming in hot. I think the Bills think they got something. And so, unlike you, I am going to take the other team. I'm going to take the Bills, and I will give the 3 points.
All right. So there you have it, North America. The gods of odds have gotten through our top 10 games worth spending some money on this weekend. Brad, I know we're going to have some closing thoughts, so go for it.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, a little bit more in that game. Derek Carr is a wild card. We've been saying that all year long. I know what I got in Josh Allen. I don't really know what I got in Derek Carr. It's pretty tough to me. And I think the Raiders aren't that far away from feeling the same way, by the way. At some point, they need to see some consistency out of Derek Carr. And, they've spent a lot of money on wide receivers. They've spent a lot of money on running backs. They got a really good offensive line. At some point, the guy's got to go out there and put 3-4 games together. And so, not that weighed into my decision at all, but it's just difficult for me to go and put money on a team that week in and week out can either look great or look terrible. That's my closing thoughts on the Raiders.
Yeah, the national media, who Brad clearly has become a member of, that is their sort of talking points when talking about Derek Carr. And I get it. But, still statistically, when you look at his last 2 or 3 years in the National Football League, Derek Carr is a nice, serviceable quarterback. He's going to make some mistakes. He's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. So, he's sort of in that, the low end of the second tier of quarterbacks in the National Football League. And, he's sort of the perfect.
By the way, yeah. And by the way, that still puts him about 4 spots ahead of Jared Goff. I had to get that
in. Well, that we absolutely disagree about. But that being said, look, I think this Raider team is. I can't wait for next week's Gods of Odds because we are definitely going to recap where Brad was wrong and Dave was right, or the other way around. Who knows? So we're going to cover all of that next week on the show. One last thing I wanted to cover before we sort of get out of here, which is we do have this just horrific Thursday night football game. I'm not sure we're getting this podcast out before the game actually ends at this point. But it is really, honestly, one of those games where I really wonder what the National Football League is really up to. Why they're serving us such a big piece of trash so early in the season. This is just the 4th week of the National Football League season. And the best they can do for us on a Thursday night is the Jets at home against the Broncos. Look, I understand they're like, we've got to get a West Coast team and an East Coast team together on Thursday night. Who can we get? and there's nobody else. I mean, like, if you're going to put somebody on Thursday night that plays in the East Coast, I can think of 5 other teams that should have played, not the New York Football Jets. At what point did the National Football League scheduler see anything that the Jets did last year to justify them earning a Thursday night football game this early in the season?
Thursday night football is bad football. historically, it's not a very good game anyways. It's the only show in town, so to speak. And so if you got the only show, you might as well maximize your profits with the minimum amount of spending. So, I mean, I don't know if that's the theory they're using, that people are going to watch regardless because it's the first game of the week. But it's a bad football. Look, Sam Darnold was a kid that my wife teaches at a high school called San Clemente High School. And Sam Darnold is a local hero that, played at San Clemente before going to USC, and now he's with the Jets. And, at some point, it's going to be the firing of Adam Gase, or it's going to be the benching of Sam Darnold. It usually goes in one of those two repetitions. Usually it's the quarterback gets benched and then the coach gets fired. But, Sam has not been particularly good. He's got zero talent around him. I mean, they're talking about Jamison Crowder. That's the big news today for the Jets. Jamison Crowder might be back. Jamison Crowder runs like a 4.7 now. If that's your number one option on offense, and Frank Gore, how old is Frank Gore? I mean, seriously. He's as old as Al Gore, isn't he?
He's like us. He's getting applications for ARP at this point. So
right. There is nothing there, and the Broncos are playing without their number one wide receiver, who's out for the season. Philip Lindsay's probably not going to play. He's got a toe injury. You're already on a backup quarterback. This is about as unappealing of a football game. I'm with you. It's about as most unappealing football game I've seen all year long.
Yeah, and I'm okay with them scheduling unappealing football games. I just don't understand how somebody that is handling scheduling for the National Football League thought that in week 4, after the performance of the New York Jets last year, that Adam Gase was going to somehow turn things around as a head coach in the National Football League. Like, anybody sane knew this wasn't going to happen. I figured the only people that didn't know were people that were in the New York Jets organization. I didn't realize that there were people inside the National Football League headquarters that were, quite frankly, as dumb as the people that are running the New York Jets. I like Joe Douglas, the GM of the Jets. This wasn't his decision to bring in Gates, but I don't understand what they were thinking in Secaucus. I just don't understand.
You know what? Bad football organizations make bad decisions, and there's a couple of scenarios that are either going to play out. Either Gase is going to talk them into another year, and they're going to draft whatever the top-rated quarterback is coming out of college, or, Gase is going to get fired, and the GM is going to have to decide what he wants to do with a really high pick. And so I think they've clearly played themselves in a position that they're going to have a top 5 pick. They're going to have to battle with the Giants. They're going to have to battle with a couple other teams for that pick. But this is a really bad football team, and, I've been saying all year long, I don't think the Broncos are that bad. If it weren't for a couple of really terrible coaching decisions, they could still have hope of, being a bubble team for the playoffs. But man,
yeah,
it's going to be a long winter in New York.
Yeah, and I think for the Broncos, not that bad. I agree. Just injured, Brad. Too many holes. Too many holes for them to sort of cover up, and I think that's the issue. Look, I think Adam Gase has another 12 hours left, maybe 18 as the head coach of the New York Jets.
In Denver, too many holes, like you said, too many injuries, and really not the foundation there in terms of coaches and leadership to get him out of it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about John Elway that's always puzzled me in Denver. John Elway was one of the great quarterbacks of all times. You would think John Elway would know quarterbacks. Has there been a GM that has ever been so off the mark on quarterbacks that are playing football in this generation?
Yeah.
I don't understand that. And he could run a little bit. John Elway was a guy that could run. You should think he would understand that in the year 2020, you have to have a quarterback that can run a little bit. Look at some of the guys he's had over the last 5-6 years. This is a guy that I I think is an unproven general manager, quite frankly. And, the hiring of Vic Fangio is just another example of that. If John Elway hadn't won a Super Bowl in Denver, would he still be the general manager of the Broncos at this point?
Yeah, look, I don't know. Elway's a bit of a legend here in Northern California as well. And I thought that the Broncos actually did a good job putting together this defense. And I thought they sort of had some nice pieces as well over the last couple of years, in the draft on the offensive side of the ball. But the leadership from a coaching perspective was one that surprised me when they hired the current regime. So I will have to absolutely agree with Hoiseth on this one. So listen, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Gods of Odds. Check out the big Heatr app when you have a chance. Brad, this was our third show of the Gods of Odds. It is week number 4 of your National Football League season. That is Brad Hoiseth there in beautiful Southern California. I am Dave Dabbah, reminding you all to check out our big sports website when you have a chance at mighty.rip. Have yourself a tremendous rest of your day.
God here, and thanks for tuning in to the Gods of Odds. For more semi-witty sports commentary, please make sure you check out mighty.rip. Okay, go ahead and kill the music now.